But for this first part, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our theme for tonight, which is codependency and loneliness. The reason why we're talking about codependency and loneliness together is because you can't have one without the other. And I'll explain. One of the best quotes that I've heard that really sums up the spirit of codependency is this quote that says, "If you leave, can you take me with you? If you leave, can you take me with you?" And that really sums up the actual essence of codependence, or as I call it, codependency, because you're not only worried about potentially being abandoned by the other person, but you abandon yourself in order to be a part of the relationship. You see the relationship as being so essential, so important, it becomes all encompassing. So you actually abandon yourself so that you can be in the relationship, even if it's to your detriment. Codependency and loneliness are put together because they are both results of childhood trauma, and they're interconnected. Loneliness, if you look it up in the dictionary, it will say something like the feeling that someone doesn't have friends or companions. But for a complex trauma survivor, the concept of loneliness goes so much deeper. Loneliness is a very intense fear for a complex trauma survivor. So it's better we have our own definition of loneliness. And so for you, I'll offer this definition. A loneliness is the perception that oneself is incomplete. The perception that oneself is incomplete alone. So codependency is fueled by loneliness, this fear, this perception that oneself is actually incomplete if by oneself. So a healthy person views himself as complete. A healthy person feels that they could be in a relationship and that may be enjoyable. In fact, they may even look forward to one, but they don't feel desperate for a relationship. A healthy person feels the way they feel about a relationship like they feel about anything that's an asset to their life, such as a house or car. They feel like it would be nice to have. Maybe even it's a goal. But if they don't have it, they're okay because they're complete. And their happiness, their sense of self-worth, all of their joy is not tied up in just owning this particular object. They recognize that their worth is inherent. They recognize themselves as being worthy of the car, the job, the house, the relationship. They recognize themselves as being worthy of love. On the other hand, an unhealthy person, someone who's metaphysically unhealthy, feels that alone they are not worthy. Alone they are not complete. And so it creates in them a desperation for what they do not have. And in this case, that would be a relationship. It creates in them a desperation to have another person, another human being by their side. It is unacceptable to them that their bed could be all to themselves, or that they could have to go to a function without having a date or a companion with them. It's altogether distressing to them that they would have to go through a moment, an hour, a day in their life without being in a committed relationship with someone. Codependency can be difficult to identify because when you think about the concept of dependency, of course, if two people are in a relationship, they depend on each other. But with codependency, it's like that depending becomes more intense, more extreme, to the point where a person depends on the person and views their dependency as a very, very real need, where in which there's not an actual life or death need, but they view it like life or death. They may say, I rather die than to be without my partner or to be without a partner. And sometimes it's not even specific to who it is. It's just that they have to have someone by their side. They feel like they have to have someone in their life who's special, and culture doesn't make it any easier for codependent people. You may have heard songs that teach the idea and perpetuate the idea that you are unhappy without your significant other. Songs with lyrics like, I am nothing, nothing, nothing if I don't have you. So codependency is basically a pop psychology term used to identify unhealthy and imbalanced relationships. But we have to understand it as existing on a spectrum. So you have on one extreme end of the spectrum being codependent, that is hyper dependent, very needy of having another person or a person needing them. And then on the other side, the other extreme of the spectrum would be someone who is extremely reclusive, or they might even be nicknamed like a hermit, because it seems like they don't really need to have anyone in their life. In fact, they don't want anyone in their life, and they push everyone away, and they actually are reclusive. They hide from the outside world. And both of those extremes are actually trauma responses. The reason why someone would isolate themselves is from a background of complex trauma. The reason why someone would feel like they cannot ever be alone, even for a moment, is also a response to complex trauma. What we want to aim for is to be in the middle, balanced on this spectrum, so that if you're a codependent person, you would look to be more independent, not constantly needing another person. If you were more of a reclusive person, you would hope to be a little bit more interdependent, a little bit more relying on other people. We can't ignore the fact that relationships can be a source of joy. And that's where loneliness can almost be a good thing. Loneliness is a negative feeling towards not having relationships and connections. So loneliness can drive you to seek those connections, to seek those relationships. So we wouldn't want to be extreme, like a hermit who stays away from everyone, an extreme recluse. But at the same time, so many of us, because of our childhood, have become extremely codependent, extremely needy of another person, or really just needing to be needed. The core loneliness that creates codependency stems back to our childhood. If a child was made to feel that they were not enough by the reactions of a caregiver or by the interactions with their caregiver, if the caregiver was abusive, the caregiver was neglectful of the emotional needs, if the caregivers abandoned the child, be that physically, emotionally, or otherwise, if the caregivers were mentally abusive and tried to convince the child that the child is nothing outside of the family and that the family is everything, or the mother is everything, or the father is everything, if the family had narcissistic parents or caregivers that sucked up all the air in the room, so to speak, so that no one could relax if the narcissist wasn't relaxed. No one could be happy if the narcissist wasn't happy. And everything had to revolve around that egocentric person in the family. Or sometimes everything has to revolve around someone in the family that has an illness, that is sick. And therefore, people learn in that family unit that their worth is just to serve, is just to do what they can to help out, and it's all about being helpful. And so people who come from complex trauma learn to be extreme people pleasers, extreme perfectionists, extreme high achievers, to be dependent on drugs and alcohol to get some sense of connection, to work extremely hard to get someone to love them, or to go the extreme opposite direction and say, forget it. I don't want to have to do the work. I don't want to have to be Mr. Good or Miss Good or Mr. Perfect. I'll just be a bad boy or I'll just be a bad girl. And they go the opposite extreme. But all of this is because of not getting a need fulfilled as a child. And that need, it was so basic, it was so essential. And that need was for a caregiver to validate the existence of that child, for the caregiver to love the child, for the caregiver to accept the child unconditionally. Because that's how a child should be accepted. That's how a child needs to be loved. When a child does not receive that, a very deep, long-lasting wound happens. You see, the long-lasting wound that happens when a child is not loved is that the child will often decide that they should also abandon themselves. And so they learn to not love themselves, and they stop accepting who they are, and they start changing, molding, morphing, and doing whatever it takes to get that love, to get that acceptance from their caregiver. This makes them codependent in many ways. For one, now they are looking for their self-worth. They're looking for their love, their value from the outside. And so whatever their family members say about them, they take that as being true and their whole identity. They rely on other people's opinions to understand who they are or what their worth is. They let other people's opinions dictate their value, and eventually narcissistic parents are relied upon to make all decisions for the child, even as they grow up, so the child never learns to make their own decisions. As a result, a person becomes deeply reliant on other people for their sense of self-worth, for their value. Or a child could have been built up but become a parentized child in that they're actually parenting their parents. And so they learn to be caretakers. And so they get into adulthood and they look for those relationships where they can take care. They're always looking for a poor soul to save, or they're looking for someone who needs them. And so they look at relationships or a potential relationship partner as someone that they can fix. Well, I can maybe save him. I can maybe save her because I can just love them out of their disability, out of their illness, out of their toxicity. If only I just love them more, if only I just take care of them more. And there we have the base of codependency. Entering into a relationship to solve another person's problems, that's codependency. Entering into a relationship to solve one's own problems, that's codependency. And ultimately, when you have that core of the self that you've actually abandoned, you're a person who's walking around like a shell, because you don't look inwardly for your decisions. You don't look inwardly for your self-worth. You don't look inwardly for your sense of competence or value. You look away from yourself because you've abandoned yourself. You've decided not to accept yourself at some point in childhood. And that's what creates the intense loneliness. It is a pain that is undescribable. Just the idea of being alone or being abandoned is so scary, because there's a very real pain that the body gives you that is punishing, pumping cortisol into your system at high levels at the very idea that you could be alone, because you've already abandoned yourself. You've already determined that you are not worthy, that you are not worth anything deep down, or that you are not worth enough to enjoy your own company. So the idea of being alone comes with some very intense pain, which then causes anxiety. Just the thought that you could have to be alone, just the thought that you could have to face that pain causes intense anxiety. This type of loneliness is a loneliness a person can feel even if they're in a room full of people. This is the type of loneliness that a person can feel even if they're in a marriage. This is the type of loneliness that's ever present. So even when you're in that relationship, it's still right in the background. It's always a fear. And the person can leave for just an hour and you already start to feel withdrawal symptoms. Why? Because the relationship in that codependent stage where you're just running from that loneliness is really just a drug. It's really just that hit of dopamine that you're getting from the way that they look at you, the way that they talk to you, the way that they interact with you. And when they say they love you, you're getting that drop of dopamine, and it's just like a drug when it hits. It's just what you needed. It gives you just enough high to keep you going into the next moment. But as soon as that person is not there, all of a sudden you start feeling down, low energy, low worth. You can't make yourself anything to eat. You can't get yourself anything to drink. You don't want to get out of bed in the morning. You don't want to go to work. Don't let there be an actual breakup. At that point, you may give up on life. Some people actually become suicidal because another person decided to leave a relationship with them. That's codependency. It's an unhealthy attachment. It's actually an addiction in the relationship. It's relying on this other person to complete them. But the other person was never really completing them, were they? In reality, the other person was just giving them the hit, the drugs. And if you're in a relationship right now, as a complex trauma survivor, you might be in a codependent relationship. And you might feel like it's fulfilling you. And in reality, that person is not special to you at all. It's all about getting your next hit. It's all about getting that drip of dopamine. Because if I said literally, like, I take this person, swap them out, and the very next night or the same night, I swap a new person in, if that idea of having a new person swapped in is relatively comfortable, then that means that the person you're with is not special to you at all. You don't even love them. It's really that you're just an addict. You're an addict in this relationship. Some people conclude that the problem can be solved by finding someone to love them. But it doesn't get solved by finding someone to love you. It doesn't get solved because the problem, remember when we go all the way back to childhood, that problem was that you abandoned yourself. It doesn't get solved by getting someone else to love you. Just like at this point, if your mom starts loving you, that doesn't like solve your childhood trauma, right? If your dad just like, oh, you know what, I'm so sorry, I love you, that doesn't solve your childhood trauma. It doesn't solve it. Why? Because the real wound was that you abandoned yourself. So getting into a new relationship isn't going to change it. It isn't going to make you cured. And then we see in these relationships that if you had those narcissistic parents, then you're out looking for more narcissistic partners, which is going to lead you to a world of hurt and pain. And narcissistic partners pull in the ego deficient partners, those people who have abandoned themselves. They draw you in with all types of love bombing and gifts and breadcrumbing. They got all kinds of tricks that they use. It's like they go to narcissistic conventions or something because they all use the same pattern, but they want to rope you in as fast as possible. When they see you don't have boundaries, that's the person they want because they're a part of that whole codependent cycle. They are codependent as well, but they didn't abandon themselves. They abandoned their empathy. And so they learn to get their needs met. They just got to manipulate. So they look for an easy prey. And that's you. The person who already abandoned themselves, very easy prey. They will not stand up for themselves. They will take all kinds of abuse. They don't have strong boundaries. It's perfect. And they're desperate. So they're not just going to want to get into a relationship. They're going to want to kiss right away. They're going to want to sleep together right away. They're going to want to get engaged and do all kinds of things that they can do to entrap you. They're going to want to move in like on the second date. It's enmeshment. It's a trap. It's a net in order to get a codependent person hooked so that they can't get out. But really, you as a codependent are also manipulating your partner to get what you need. Because you needed to be needed. And so you needed their problems, their issues. You needed to feel like you could fix them so that you could get your hit of dopamine. You are also using them. And so you're basically lying to each other And you guys are also lying to the rest of the world, and you may be lying to yourselves. And you may be using magical thinking when you lie to yourself, saying, well, you know what, that person's not that bad. Like, okay, yeah, I know they hit me, and I know they're terrible when they get mad, but that's just when they're mad, right? But that's just when they're drunk that they become abusive. So now you're using magical thinking, like, if I just love them enough and I'm just going to fix them, you got some kind of algebraic equation in your head, like, if I do 3 more years of this, plus the 10 years we've been together, plus more love, I think I can cure them, and I think it'll work. Like, I think I can piece and patch this together. I can make this old jalopy actually get me to my destination. But it's all just a cyclical vortex. Eventually, if you stay in a relationship like that, you'll be gaslit out of your own reality. And you'll be in very, very deep mental health crisis. It is detrimental to your metaphysical health. It's detrimental to your life, staying in relationships that are unhealthy, that are abusive. So to solve codependency, a person must begin rehabilitating themselves. If you're already in a marriage, don't worry, you don't have to leave your marriage to stop being codependent. You don't have to go and break up with everyone to stop being codependent. What you need to do is go back and heal the original wound. Do you remember what the original wound was? Yeah, it was caused by your mother not loving you and your father abandoning you. But the original wound that's unhealed, whether people love you or not, is what you did to yourself. It was when you prioritized everyone else's love and approval over your own ego, over your own well-being, and said, forget it, I'm going to kill myself so I can survive this toxic family of origin that I live in. So you got to go back there, and you got to decide to pick that child back up off the ground, dust them off, and tell them, sorry about that. You're actually worthwhile after all. You have to go back to that child. That's you, by the way, and tell yourself, sorry about that. Everyone else was abandoning me, and that's why I abandoned me too. But I shouldn't have. I apologize to you because you're actually worthy of love. Because every child is worthy of love, right? So why would you be any different? You were a child. You were worthy of love. Don't say, oh, but I was different. I was the one child who wasn't worthy of love. That's garbage. You were worthy of love like every child. Every human child is worthy of love. That's just a given fact. You have no excuse for abandoning yourself. Not any longer. At that time when you were a kid, we understand. We understand. You were a child. You didn't know any better. But now, you are responsible for you. If you continue to neglect yourself, if you continue to hate yourself, if you continue to neglect your metaphysical, that is your mental and emotional needs, so that you can have the love or approval of some other person, you are now culpable. You are now the abandoner. You are now the neglector. You are now the abuser, and you're abusing yourself. And people think that, well, oh, if it's just me I'm abusing, that's okay because it's me. Ha ha ha. No, you're still a human being. Abuse is abuse. If you abuse you, you're still an abusive human being. So don't abuse that person. Don't abuse yourself. Pick yourself back up, dust them off, and say, I'm sorry I left you back there. You're extremely valuable. You're valuable because you have a potential that is exponential. You have a potential, you have a capacity that is beautiful, that is infinite. The amount of things that you could potentially do and accomplish are not only from here to the sky, but only you can do them, because every individual is unique. So I have to love you. I have to love you because it's my universal responsibility to care for you. You are the one person I'm supposed to be caring about, and I'm busy worrying about caring about everyone else. You have to go back and say that to yourself. And you may have to wake up every morning and say the same thing. And you may have to start rethinking all of your decisions. The way that you think, the way that you act, the way that you move, all needs to be based on fulfilling your primary responsibility in this universe, which is to make the most of you, to care for you. We have entrusted you with you. You, the conscious self, can take care of not just the body, but the soul of the person that you are. You can nurture the self by telling the self that you're worth it, that you have value, the same way you would care for any child. You need to care for yourself. Yes, it wasn't originally your fault. Yes, you're not the original person who did the abandoning, but now it is on you. If you continue to abandon the self, it is now on you. So let's do a little meditation. Think about these concepts for a moment so that we can unprogram the old way of thinking and reprogram and update our mind to new beliefs so we can cure ourselves of this codependency. Thought number one, do we need to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a best friend to be a worthwhile human being? Yes or no? If you're taking notes, you can put these in your notes as well. Because you need to go over these and get these as your new thoughts. When a beautiful baby is born, is that baby not worthy of love and life? Of course it is. Do you feel that a baby needs to hurry up and go and get into a relationship because that baby is not worth anything as they are? Of course not. Well, if the baby's worth a full worth of a human being at 1, 2, 3 years old, at what point did they become not worth a full person? At what point did they become in need of another person, in need of a relationship in order to still be worthy? What age? 7, 17, 27? At what age does that person lose their inherent value and now need another person to have value? What do you come up with? Another thought for meditation, think of someone you admire, someone in history, someone who's famous. Do you admire them because of who they married? Usually not, right? In most cases, if you admire someone, it's because of them. It's because of what they accomplish. It's because of what they chose to do with their gifts. It's because of how they fulfilled their own potential. Something to think about. Because who you're going to become in life and you reaching your potential is not dependent on who you marry or if you marry anyone. You're not really consumed with the romantic partner of the person that you admire. And likewise for you, that'll be a part of your story, but it's not your whole story. So it shouldn't be your whole focus. It shouldn't be your whole pursuit in life. We also want to change our perspective on singleness, right? Because every person is born single, right? But in some cultures, there's so much pressure. When are you getting married? When are you getting married? Like you're barely 14 years old and your parents and grandparents and communities are already on top of you about when you're getting married. And so it's almost like you become brainwashed to believe your main responsibility in life is to get married. But is that really right? Is that the most important thing in your life is to go and find someone to get married, even if they're a subpar person? Or should you maybe enjoy your personal freedom for as long as you have it? Something you can do as a morning meditation on this subject is think about the energy that gets poured out. If you've experienced a breakup, for instance, love, caring, and empathy, those are energy, right? So just like electricity, energy runs well on a circuit because energy never disappears, it just transfers, right? So where are you transferring your loving energy? Where are you transferring your caring energy, your empathy energy? Where is it going? And I'm not talking about whimsical energy. This is scientific, okay? Because all of these thoughts that are created in the brain, that's all energy. That's all electrical, chemical energy. The brain is burning up 20% of the calories that you eat every single day. So that means that you're taking like a quarter of your food every day and you're burning it in the brain. So what are you thinking about? Are you wasting all that brain power on obsessing about this guy or this girl that's not even in a relationship with you anymore, that left you behind and treated you like trash? Are you spending that would be like you might as well take a quarter of your food every single meal, pack it into a box, and then ship it off to them. And they'll receive it and just toss it in the garbage because it's useless to them. That would be more useful, because at least you won't be sitting there in all of the pain, the depression, and the anxiety, because that's what you're doing. You're actually burning a quarter of the food that you eat on just thinking about this person and ruminating about this relationship that is no more. So what you want to do in your morning meditation is picture the love, the empathy, the care that goes out from you, all that energy, and you need to recomplete that circuit and bring that love, care, and empathy all back to yourself. You see, because when you were in a loving relationship, if you were in a loving relationship, it was a full circuit. You poured it out and you received it back. But now that the person has cut off the circuit, you can't just afford to pour out energy. It literally is costing you money. You are literally buying the food that funds this constant outpouring of love, empathy, and care into the universe that's not going to anyone or benefiting anyone. And meanwhile, you're abandoning yourself. So complete the circuit back to yourself. You have to receive the energy back. So you can continue to love, just like you love, care like you care, empathize like you empathize, but picture yourself in this meditative process of bringing that love, care, and empathy back to the self. Loving yourself means to focus on your purpose. All of us have gifts. It's your job to learn to develop your gifts. It's your job to learn to fulfill your potential. You have to focus on your aim. You pick a purpose that is a goal that you're working toward, and that's where you pour your energy and your calories into developing yourself to the best version of yourself, living up to your purpose and living up to your values along the way. By developing yourself, now you take yourself out of the rut of codependency, right? Because the rut of codependency is, oh man, I'm not in the relationship that I want to be in. I'm so lonely. This is terrible. Well, since I'm pouring out all this energy, I'm too exhausted, too tired, too depleted, too depressed, too anxious to leave my house. So I'm not going to go out and have any fun. I'm not going to go to a restaurant. I'm not going to do any activities. I'm not going to pursue a purpose. I'm just going to lay in bed all day and barely take care of myself. And then my health goes and I become less attractive. And the cycle just continues. The longer you stay in that rut, you continue down and down and down that vortex like a toilet. You're just getting flushed. You're flushing yourself. But you can break out of that rut when you make a decision to focus on you and your potential, fulfilling your purpose in life. Because as much as it may not feel like it at first, you will create the neural pathways so that it becomes automatic. And when you're out there living your life, not worrying so much about a relationship, what happens? You know what happens. Now you meet someone. You can't meet someone staying inside your house depressed. You find the connection, you find the relationships when you're out, not looking for the connections in the relationships anymore. That is always how it goes. As painful as it is, it's an inconvenient truth. Rarely does anyone find someone that's good for them when they're in a desperate state of finding someone. That gets you either more loneliness or more horrible relationships. So if you're single, you need to reframe the way you look at your singleness. So, and the way you look at relationships. So here's some thoughts to think about. Because we get a lot in the media that really glorifies relationships. So let's look at it critically, right? Being in a relationship makes it harder for you to achieve your goals in life. It's true, we can get connection from relationships. It's true. And that feels good and that's natural and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're in a relationship, it makes it harder for you to achieve your goals because the relationship is more distracting to your time, right? Being in a relationship takes a lot of your time. Your time is one of your most valuable assets. The other person's flaws and illnesses inevitably become your problem if you're in a relationship. Right? Let's just balance our thinking of what a relationship really is instead of just fantasizing about it. If you're in a relationship, you lose quite a bit of freedom. Your decisions are now directly affecting another person. So you don't get to move about freely when you're in a relationship. You have to constantly think about how it's going to affect another person. Let's be realistic. You will inevitably hurt the other person, and they will inevitably hurt you because of your imperfection and because of their imperfection. Relationships can be a little bit expensive too, at least for one of the partners. So you're also very vulnerable in a relationship because the other person can hurt you. And no matter how hard you've worked or how perfect you've been, another person can get up and just walk right back out of your life like it's nothing. So recognize what it really is. A relationship is not nirvana. It's not heaven. It comes with its costs. Don't over fantasize about what the relationship can be. And the way that you're looking at being single as just being the worst thing in the world, you're not seeing the value in what you have. So try to balance your thought process on being single. It's not all bad. For the first time in your life, if you're single for the first time in your life, you are not being abused by anyone. It is very valuable. Meditate on the advantages. You can travel on a whim. You don't have to ask anyone for permission to do anything. You're available now to meet someone special. All of the fear that you have of being alone and all of the desire you have to be with someone, it gets solved by first being single. You can't be with someone if you're already with someone else. Like, it doesn't make sense. In order to actually be able to get a healthy relationship, you have to have a moment, you have to have a time period in your life where you're not in a relationship so that you're actually eligible and available. You get the whole bed to yourself. You get peace and quiet when you're sleeping. You don't have to worry about anyone snoring. And when you're awake, you get space and time to think. You can avoid settling. Single people statistically are healthier. Single people statistically are better at keeping up with their friends. Single people are statistically better employees and better employers. So those are some things to think about. Finally, I want to give you some homework on this because it's important that we adjust our mindset and our thinking on this concept of codependency, right? Because you have values, and if your values are improper, then you're going to have more depression, more anxiety because those values are maladaptive, right? So if you think things like, I am nothing without a person by my side, that is a cognitive distortion. That's not accurate. So you change that perception, you change that value to something healthy. Like, I am quite amazing with or without a person. I'm still amazing. I will be a success whether I have a person in my life or not, right? Or this, I need someone to hold. I just have to have someone. Well, now you're taking a want and turning it into a need. You do that, you're going to get more depression. So change that and bring it back. Balance your thought. No. I want someone to hold, perhaps, but I have what I truly need in life. And I am grateful because it could be so much worse for me. Or I just need to be needed. No. I need to fulfill my desire to serve others. I need to fulfill my potential. I need to do work, volunteer work, religious service, a career path, fulfill my goals in life. I need to fulfill my purpose. That's what I need. And then I can feel needed and I can feel useful, but it doesn't have to be in a codependent relationship. Or you might be one of those people who's like, I can't show up to my family's house alone. I just cannot. No way. Change your perception. Hey, it could be good for me to show up without someone, to break these toxic viewpoints and patterns and all the subtle shaming that I go through and that others go through in my family if they don't show up with a partner. I'm looking forward to showing up and being loved for who I am, not who I have on my arm. Or if I'm not in a relationship, then nobody can love me. Since I'm not in a relationship right now, no one could love me. I'm unlovable. Change your thinking. If I'm not in a relationship with anyone, that means no one's abusing me, no one's neglecting me. I value protecting my metaphysical health over what other people think of me. My single status is temporary, so I might as well enjoy it. It's all the way that you speak to yourself. It's the way that you think that allows you to feel in health or in illness. So here's the homework assignment. On a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being the worst, 10 being the best, predict how much you would enjoy doing an activity by yourself. This would be an activity that you would normally think, I have to have someone else. And you can do this even if you're in a marriage or if you're in a relationship, to help solve that codependency, that belief, that feeling that you have to have someone. Go do something by yourself. But first, you're going to predict how happy you think you'll be on a scale of 0 to 10 doing that activity. So that's going to be your joy chart. So you decide, okay, I think I'll be 7 in happiness going out to the movies by myself or going to a restaurant by myself. And then go do it. After you've predicted how happy you'll be, go try it. I know it seems crazy, but this is how you solve your fears and your codependency. You go out and you actually try it for yourself. And what do you find? After you're done, after you've taken yourself out to eat, or you stayed in and made yourself a gourmet meal, something you would normally think you needed another person to do it to enjoy it. Some activity. You go do it and then rate how happy, how joyful you actually were doing it. And you may be very surprised at the results. So I look forward to hearing in the weeks to come what you went out and did by yourself and how happy you were in comparison to how happy you thought you were going to be doing it. But we can let go of the fear that we're nothing if we're without someone. You're everything. Whether you're with someone or not, you are very valuable.